Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today we continue our 32-part 2021 team previews. Tonight's team, the Carolina Hurricane. Thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. Thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. Make sure you follow us down below on our website, i80sports.com, for all of our team previews coming up, because we are previewing every single NHL team before the start of the season in the middle of October, which, holy moly, now we're in October. The start of the season is only a few short days away. I'm hyped. I know you guys are hyped. So you got to make sure that you drop some love on the content that we're bringing you guys. And while you're here, if you're on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for all the content that we have coming up for the beginning of this NHL season and for the final couple episodes here of our team previews. And if you're on Twitter, make sure you follow us down below at I80_sports NHL. And if you're following us already, thank you guys so much, because we greatly value all of your support. Without you guys, we can't do this on a weekly basis. So thank you guys so much. I'm Brian. He's Tom. Tom, how you doing today?
Doing well, and here we are to introduce a up-and-coming team, I guess, or to preview, not introduce an up-and-coming team, the Carolina Hurricanes, a team that has a lot of promise, but still has some work to do, if you ask me. So let's just get right to it.
To quote a famous rap line, don't call it a comeback. They've been here for years. And in Carolina's case, they've been here for a couple of years now, and I think Carolina could be ready to make some noise this year. But first, before we talk about the future, we got to look at the past. So it's time to start talking a little bit about what they did last year. So what was Carolina's record last year? Well, they were 36, 12, and 8. That's 36 wins to 12 losses to 8 overtime losses. That was good for first place in the Central Division last year. Pretty good season overall. Power play and penalty kill, well, they were just straight killing it last year, because on the power play, they were at 25.6% on the power play. For those of you who know what we do to track league average is at 19%. So with Carolina sitting at 25.6%, certainly one of the highest teams with that percentage in the entire NHL. And on the penalty kill, well, they were killing it yet again. 85.2% on the penalty kill last year. That's another team among the best in the entire NHL on the penalty kill. Carolina getting it done last year. Now, leading scorers on the Carolina Hurricane, we had Sebastian Aho with 57 points, Vince Trocheck with 43 points. Pretty surprising when I saw that. I was just like, Vinny Trocheck had 43 points? Yeah, he had 43 points last year. Good for him. Coming also into his UFA year this year. So that's going to be an interesting detail to keep in mind. And then Andrei Svetchnikov with 42 points last year as well. The Magic Hands putting up the numbers again. Now it's time to look at some key additions and subtractions here for the Carolina Hurricane. Additions, they made some pretty interesting additions in the offseason. There were also quite a few interesting subtractions. We'll get to those in a second. On the addition side, Dylan Well, Ethan Bear, Frederick Anderson, Ian Cole, Tony DeAngelo, Josh Lavo, Antti Ranta, CJ Smith, Brendan Smith, Jalen Chatfield, Sam Miletic, Stefan Nason, Alex Lyon, Maxim Lutunov, Derek Stepan, Josh Jacobs, Andrew Perlowski, and Jesperi Kotkaniemi, which was an offer sheet deal. Pretty nuts to think about that. Subtractions, they had some pretty big subtractions here. Alex Nedeljkovic, Jake Bean, Warren Fogle, Dougie Hamilton, Brock McGinn, Roland McEwen, Peter Mrazek, Cedric Paquette, James Reimer, Sheldon Rempal, Yanni Hakampa, Dylan Wells, Antoine Bibeau, David Gust, Morgan Geekie. And Morgan Geekie was lost to the expansion draft to Seattle. So Morgan Geekie officially a member of the Seattle Kraken. So some pretty interesting additions, some pretty interesting subtractions. Now we're going to talk about some X factors. And no, we're not talking about EA Sports NHL 22 X factors here. We're talking about our own brand of X factors, who we feel are pivotal aspects of this Carolina Hurricanes team. Who are some important figures here that are going to make or break their season? Tom, at this point, I've done more than enough talking, so it's time to hear from you. Who do you feel are some X factors here on the Carolina Hurricane this year?
Well, where do we start here? This team reminds me a lot of those Pittsburgh Penguin teams from the last decade that won back-to-back cups in 2016 and 2017. Very, very top-heavy, okay defense, and okay goaltending. They have very good center depth here in Sebastian Aho, Vincent Trocheck, and Jordan Staal. They have very good top six wings here in Andrei Svetchnikov, Martin Nikis, Nito Niederreiter, and Teuvo Teravainen. And even on line three, Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Jesper Foss are also really good depth wingers to have on that third line. Sorry, guys, if I'm ruining our depth chart preview here, but it's just something I really have to get into because those guys are going to be the total X factor for this team. Their D is really nothing to write home about. The goaltending is decent. That's the X factor right there. That's what's going to make this team go is how well this top nine plays. These top nine forwards and this top nine depth is what's going to make this team go, is what's going to make this team win games. And it's what's going to be the difference between wins and losses on certain nights. And it's what's going to be the difference in big games versus teams in a division like, say, the New York Islanders. You know, that's what's going to be the difference. So in my mind, it's everybody in those first three lines in the forwards, everyone in that top nine. That's my X factor for this team.
Yeah, and really interesting contribution there. And for me, I think a lot of people are quick to jump and say, oh, Sebastian Aho is an obvious X factor here with 57 points last year, over a point per game. You know, he's an obvious X factor here. And I agree. I think he is a very obvious X factor, but there's somebody else who did not play a full season last year, who I think over a course of a full season this year could very well have a chance of leading in scoring this year for the Carolina Hurricane. And that's Andrei Svetchnikov. Svetchnikov has, to be honest, and this might be my opinion, but just go and watch tape. You'll know he has some of the prettiest hands in the entire league and has a natural scoring touch. Going into his age 21 season, which, side note, holy crap, he's only 21 years old. Svetch could have a career year this year. His highest point total was 2 years ago with 61 points. But I think he can break that this year. Next, to me, a major X factor here is the defense. This defense could miss Dougie Hamilton this year. And stepping into his place currently is Tony DeAngelo, who really has not played an NHL game since March of 2020. No, I'm not really counting 2021. And if you want to go and do the digging yourself, there are plenty of storylines to look up from the 2021 season on Tony DeAngelo. But Tom's already shaking his head. Might be worth a look. Anyway, DeAngelo has some big shoes to fill. And though he has been solid offensively, there's no one knocking that. Offensively, Tony DeAngelo is a plus offensive defenseman. He has lacked in the defensive aspect of his game. Lastly, there's the shiny new goaltender, Freddie Anderson. And Anderson missed a large chunk of last year and only sported a .895 save percentage, which those that know goaltending stats, that's not a very pretty stat. And the other big thing as a factor here for Freddie Anderson, he has not posted anything above a .920 save percentage since his rookie season as an Anaheim Duck. And he is a long way away from his rookie season at this point, at 31 years old. I'll be honest, I'm not sure that Freddie Anderson is an upgrade over the recently traded Alex Nedeljkovic. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that trade. Those of you that got the chance to watch our Detroit Red Wings preview, I'm still wrapping my head around that. I do not understand this trade. Make it make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. Unless somehow, some way, Carolina hits on that third round pick or flip it for something extraordinary. It just doesn't make sense to me. It really does not. And either way, when all is said and done, this is a new goalie tandem here in Carolina this year. You've got Freddie Anderson, you've got Antti Ranta. Last year, you had Alex Nedeljkovic and Peter Mrazek. The hope is the tandem this year is better than the tandem last year, but we're just going to have to wait and see. This is exactly why the games are played, but either way, all eyes are on Freddie Anderson to perform this year, and he's got some pretty big shoes to fill for Alex Nedeljkovic's performance last year as a Carolina Hurricane. Next, we've got some breakout candidates that we need to talk about. And when we're thinking about breakout candidates, we're talking about maybe a player that has maybe they're coming into their rookie season, haven't had a real crack at the NHL roster yet, or maybe they have a little bit of NHL experience, haven't quite had a career year or lived up to the potential yet. Tom, we're going to start with you here. Who's a breakout candidate or candidates for the Carolina Hurricane this year?
Well, I'm curious to see what Ethan Bear can do here. He was close to a point per game D-man in juniors in WHL. And for the WHL, that's really, really good. And what is a league that's a very heavy-hitting league? But a point-per-game D-man in that league is very good. Anyways, that hasn't really carried over to the NHL for him. He's been close to 20 points a season so far in the NHL. And if he can say up that to, say, maybe 30 and 35, it would be a huge, huge step for this team, if you ask me.
Yeah, Ethan Bear is a very popular choice here, especially with the change of scenery. Here. Another popular choice is Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who with only 20 points last year in over 50 games played, not a very impressive stat for a guy who was picked third overall not too long ago. And people also forget he's also only 21 years old. And also think about the playoff stats from this past year. Really, really not a bad job. 8 points, 19 games. Not too shabby by Jesperi Kotkaniemi by any means at all. 8 points in 19 games. I thought I was reading the wrong statistic there for a second. But Jesperi Kotkaniemi could actually, benefit from a change of scenery here, and also not having to play up the middle all the time. Shifting him over to the wing could be kind of a blessing in disguise for his development as a player, since he really didn't get the chance to develop with Montreal. My pick, however, though, as a breakout candidate is Martin Nikis. And the reason why I say Nikis is because he had a really good season last year. 41 points in 53 games played. And the former first round pick, I'm going to learn how to English sometime. It's going to be magical. He could be getting top line minutes this year, playing alongside Andrei Svetchnikov and Sebastian Aho. And with that being said, Nikis could very well break his point total from last year, which he also broke his point total last year as well. So his progression is only going to keep going up and up and up. He was nearly at a point per game last year. Could he get closer to that stat total? We'll just have to see. I think Nikis could very well be in line for a breakout and maybe career year this year under a full 82-game season. Now, we are going to talk about the potential opening night lineup, which, of course, we've got to add the little asterisk to the side. A, this is our opinion, but then B, we do try to put a little bit of research behind this. We use Daily Faceoff as well as The Athletic to also help our decisions here. Plus, we're also about a week or so away from the beginning of the season, so there's things that can change in training camp. Maybe a guy wins a spot, or maybe another person gets hurt. So there's ways that this opening night lineup can change. So, of course, as always, guys, take this with a grain of salt. But let's take a look at what this lineup could look like in not too long from now. So we're going to start here with the first line, as we always do, moving from left wing, center to right wing. We've got Andrei Svetchnikov with Sebastian Aho and Martin Nikis. Next on the second line, we've got Nino Niederreiter with Vincent Trocheck and Teuvo Teravainen. Next on the third line, we've got Jesperi Kotkaniemi with Jordan Staal and Jesper Foss. Jordan Staal, the captain of this team, of course. And on the fourth line, we've got Steven Lorentz with Derek Stepan and Jordan Martinook. Next, onto the first line of defense, we've got Jacob Slavin with Tony DeAngelo. On the second line, Brady Shea with Brett Pesce. And on the third line, Ian Cole with Ethan Bear. And as we mentioned before, the goaltending, I made this a starting, and backup situation because I think Freddie is going to get the majority of the playing time here. So starting goaltender, Freddie Anderson with backup goaltender, Antti Ranta. So pretty good lineup on paper here for the Carolina Hurricane. I got to say, this is actually a pretty impressive forward group amongst the entire Metropolitan Division. But as always, we've got to talk about variables here. There are ways that this lineup can change between now and opening night, obviously, but then there are ways that this lineup can evolve from opening night to the Olympic break, and then from the Olympic break past the trade deadline. So, Tom, let's start with you here. What are some variables to this lineup that you can see?
Well, let's be obvious here. Right now, it's defense and the goaltending. The D just got, if you ask me, I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. The D got worse. Sorry. Tony DeAngelo is not Dougie Hamilton. And if you really ask me, Tony DeAngelo is on his last legs here. If Tony DeAngelo screws up down here in Carolina, he will never play in the NHL again. He's this close to being done. And not years and years ago, it was only 2 years ago with COVID and everything. It makes it seem like a decade ago, but it was really only 2 years ago. He had the big year in New York for the Rangers. And everybody and their mother was telling me this guy is the next Norris candidate. This guy is the next Brian Leetch. He's not the next Brian Leetch. And the team did have a Norris candidate, eventual Norris winner, but it was not him. That was Adam Fox. We can talk about that another day. Doesn't really matter right now. We all know Tony DeAngelo can run a power play. We all know Tony DeAngelo can be a first pair D-man. We all know Tony DeAngelo can score goals. We all know Tony DeAngelo can dish out assists. But here's the real question. This is a top echelon team in this division. This is supposed to be a cup contender and a top team in the East and a top playoff team. And answer me this one. If you're playing against a team like the New York Islanders, who are very defense first and very system oriented, and you have a lead on those guys with about 2 minutes left in the game, do you put Tony DeAngelo out there if the faceoff is in your own zone? And my answer is absolutely not. Absolutely not. To win a Norris Trophy, you got to be the best defenseman, and that also means playing defense. The word defense and defenseman means playing well without the puck. I've never seen him really play that well without it, to tell you the truth. To bring that Pittsburgh Penguin comparison round again, the Penguins in those years where they won back-to-back cups, you had the great players out there like Sidney Crosby, like Evgeny Malkin, like Phil Kessel, like Chris Letang. You had Matt Murray, and that Matt Murray was not a great goaltender, was not a Vezina winner. But you just had to rely on Matt Murray to stop a puck here and there while those guys scored all the goals and basically played fast transitioning hockey. And I think what Carolina's doing here is they're relying on Freddie Anderson and Antti Ranta to do the same thing. The thing is, I don't know if Freddie Anderson nor Antti Ranta is at the same level that Matt Murray was in back then. And Matt Murray, if he did screw up, had that old veteran in Marc-Andre Fleury to fall back on. Neither of these guys are close to Marc-Andre Fleury either. And I'm real curious with a team like this who's going to rely on the top nine and going to rely on a lot of offensive hockey. If you need a goalie to steal a game for you, whether it be a playoff game or a big game at the end of the year, can you rely on either one of these guys to win that game? And the other thing is you've seen with Freddie Anderson in the past is this. He's sort of been unreliable. And another question that comes to my mind is this. Will Antti Ranta maybe be the number one guy for a little bit of time this year, just in case Freddie Anderson enters into another funk? But in my mind, that's it. It's that D and that goaltending are going to be the biggest variables for this team. They are.
Yeah, and I'm going to elaborate on your point there. Defense and goaltending. Last year, this was one of Carolina's strongest areas by far. But after trading Ned and losing Hamilton to free agency, I think both are significantly weaker because of it. Moves like these are going to force guys on the right side, meaning the right side of the fence, such as Brett Pesce, Tony DeAngelo, and Ethan Bear, to work really hard to help Carolina forget about Dougie Hamilton. And Freddie and Ranta, they need to step up this year as veterans to give Carolina a chance when, not if, they make the playoffs. Carolina is a playoff team. Make no mistake about that. And they will build with that in mind, meaning they're going to build their roster. They're going to build their team throughout this year with that in mind. That being said, just checking cap friendly, which thank God for cap friendly, they currently have no cap space. And they have a bunch of players slated to be UFAs and RFAs this upcoming season. So in no particular order of UFA and RFA, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Nino Niederreiter, Vinny Trocheck, Martin Nikis, Ethan Bear are just a few names on that list that you need to potentially pay in the offseason. Sure, can you let a couple of these guys walk? Probably. Names off the top of my head, Niederreiter could be a guy that walks. Trocheck could be a guy that walks in free agency, but you got to give Martin Nikis this big boy contract. Ethan Bear is on an RFA contract. You potentially have to pay him. And Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who you just offered and that you just offer sheeted, is also due after this year. So if he performs, guess what? You got to saddle him up too. So Carolina will have to be creative. If they want to add a piece or two at the trade deadline this year, they might need to make some sacrifices to this lineup. But that's what good teams do. Good teams make some, potential sacrifices so that way they could finally, hoist that Stanley Cup at the end of the season, which Carolina, they're no stranger to hoisting the Stanley Cup. They hoisted it last in 2006, I believe. Am I correct there, Tom?
You are correct. 7-game series against the Oilers.
Yep.
But that was nowhere near the same team as this team. None of those guys are around.
No, nowhere near that same team. They had a lot of veteran leadership on that team. This is a team that's very much green to the playoffs, but at the same time, they've got some very interesting characters there that I would not be surprised to lift a Stanley Cup sometime soon. And Carolina, they could very well be that team that surprises a lot of people, as they do year in and year out. This year is no different with that in mind. So a lot of this is kind of nitpicky stuff, but there are some legitimate concerns with this lineup coming from the outside looking in, obviously. Maybe Carolina fans, maybe they have their rose-colored glasses on and they're just thinking just like playoffs are bust, Stanley Cup or bust, whatever, full speed ahead. But, from the outside looking in, I think it kind of hurts to lose Dougie Hamilton. I think it kind of hurts to lose Alex Nedeljkovic for almost nothing. So, and to add some kind of questionable figures, some guys that you're not sure are going to be able to perform in the footsteps of the people who were there previously. So, maybe this is all hyperbole, maybe this is not hyperbole. We're just going to have to see what happens. This is exactly why the games are played, as I alluded to before. Now, on to our last segment and the question of the day, which the question of the day stays the same as always, which is, where does Carolina finish in the Metropolitan Division this year? Tom, where do you think the Carolina Hurricane finish in the Metropolitan Division this year?
You know what? Despite all the changes with this team, right now you have two obvious teams in decline in this division. You have one team who is downright horrible. You have another team who's seesaw. You have two other teams who, if things go right, may do some damage. And then you have another team who didn't get worse but didn't get better. So with all that in mind, I'm going to go with second place for them right now. There's another team right here who we will mention later on who didn't particularly get any worse like they did, but didn't particularly get any better either. But I think that just because of that and just because they're a little more set in stone, that I think that there's one team in this division who might just be a little bit better than them. So I'm going with second place.
I think I know who you have in mind for who might just be better than Carolina this year, but I'll be honest, this is an exciting lineup despite the changes. I mean, do I think they're better than last year? Not really. But they are a very interesting team to keep your eye on over the course of this year. I think they're one of the, upper tier teams of the entire NHL. And their offense could very well be deadly this year. I mean, you look at that cast of characters in terms of their scoring ability. This is a team that can put points up. Sometimes your best defense is a really, really good offense. And the likes of Andrei Svetchnikov, Sebastian Aho, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Vinny Trocheck, Martin Nikis, the likes of those can absolutely put pucks in the net. So that being said, I'm going to conservatively say first place here for Carolina. There are a few teams, there are like one or two teams I think that could take it from them. But that being said, I just think that highly of Carolina's offense this year. I just think that they're running on all cylinders, and this could be Carolina's year to make a deep run if everything shakes off right for Carolina this year. But that being said, guys, what do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you disagree with our takes today? Let us know down below. Drop a comment. And while you're there, make sure that you like and subscribe for all of our team previews because, hey, you might not necessarily be a Carolina Hurricane fan, but as we said before, we are previewing all 32 teams in the NHL before the beginning of the NHL season. And after this, there's only 4 teams left to go, 2 of which are mine and Tom's favorites teams. So we're definitely looking forward to those episodes. That's going to be really, really awesome. We hope you guys join us for that. And if you have any favorite teams in the Pacific Division, in the Central Division, in the Atlantic Division, make sure that you go back and check out those episodes. They're there on a playlist on our YouTube page on I80 Sports. But you might be wondering to yourself, where else can I find their content? Well, you can find it down below at i80sports.com, where not only can you find our team previews and the rest of our NHL content, but hey, the football season is in full swing right now. You can check out our NFL and NCAA football content. Soccer season is also in full swing, so you can check out our MLS content. And the NBA season is getting ready to kick off as well. The NBA team is previewing the divisions as we speak right now. So make sure you drop some love on their content as well. Those guys are working just as hard, if not harder, than we are currently. So you got to make sure that you drop some love to them. And if you're on Twitter, make sure you follow us down below at I80_SportsNHL. And if you're currently following us, thank you guys so much because we greatly value all of your support. Without you guys, we can't do this on a weekly basis. But as always, it's time to move away here from the Carolina Hurricane. It's time to talk about a different team. So we hope you guys join us for the next installment. But for now, thank you guys so much. I'm Brian. He's been Tom. This has been our Carolina Hurricane 2021-2022 team preview.